Hello, my friends. This is Paul, and welcome to A Common Touch of Fantasy. Today, we are reviewing the horror fantasy book Uprooted by Naomi Novik. Uh, this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy review as I talk about how terrifying this book is. So, first off, our main character is a girl that is 17 years old and she is called Anishka. And she has a friend named Cassia. And they are approaching their 17th birthday, and on that birthday, this uh, guy that blackmails an entire valley worth of people because he has to protect them from this evil woods, and he every 10 years gets to come down and just kidnap one of the girls that lives in these villages. And so yeah, so he's blackmailing all these people for protection, and so he comes down to pick between these girls. Poor Cassia, she has grown her entire life to think that she is going to be this guy's wife and she's going to be mistreated. And so every single moment of her life, she is thinking about how awful it's going to be living with this guy. And basically, she's being emotionally and psychologically abused because of it. And lo and behold, Dragon ends up picking Anishka. Anishka is a clumsy girl that always gets dirty. That's basically her personality. Okay, so this is basically a dual antagonist book. We have Dragon, which is this huge creeper that uses people and captures women and puts them into his tower. And then we have the Woods, which is this malevolent being that attacks the villages around there. And so Dragon ends up protecting these villages by doing things against the Woods, but he's actually taking advantage of the situation 100%. Okay, so we have Nishka Dragon in the tower. This tower is really tall, and the bottom of the tower is a prison where the former tower owner ended up putting his wife in it and capturing her. And also there's like a tomb down there. It's basically a prison underneath and a dungeon. At the top is the attic, and that's where Nishka gets to stay. Nishka has to do everything for Dragon. She has to cook for him. She has to clean for him. She has to do everything. She is basically Dragon's slave. And her appearance is not acceptable to Dragon, so Dragon tells her about this magic that can change her appearance. They give her like a ballroom gown that's really tight and has like a corset, and she can barely breathe, but he wants her to dress like that. So he is basically making her a slave, and she has to do everything that that he wants her to do. And he is just a big creep and a horrible person and the villain of this story. And so Stockholm Syndrome kicks in with Anishka. She ends up having feelings for this guy, even though he has kept her there kidnapped and making her do everything and emotionally abusing her nonstop and manipulating her emotions. Okay? Okay, so then Cassia, Anishka's former best friend, she gets turned into this half wood person, and she's basically possessed. Before this, we have Anishka going to save the day in a village because Dragon decided that he didn't want to save a village. He wanted to go kill a dragon, a wyvern instead. So we have Anishka, who barely knows any magic, and she is doing something that probably will get herself killed. And so she goes and saves this village from this evil possession of the cows, and there's also a possessed young man, and it is terrifying. The woods makes these people really crazy and demonic and really ugly, and it's terrifying. But she's able to turn the guy into stone and burn all the cows that has the corruption in them, and it's a terrifying scene. So now that Cassia, her friend, is possessed, Dragon and her has to do this spell that basically takes away the spirit inside her best friend, which is like like a wood person now, and it's terrifying. Like it's legitimately the scariest exorcism scene I've ever read in a book. And yeah, so they end up cleaning her of her body, the spirit out of her, and she's okay, but she's basically wood. And people are upset about that. And the prince comes by. He came by earlier and tried to rape poor Anishka. I mean, she's already a slave and kidnapped and being held against her will, but now men are trying to rape her. And Dragon's response was, okay, let's give him a memory of him actually raping you. Yeah, that is how evil this dragon guy really is. And he continues to neg Anishka and emotionally manipulate her. And she ends up having feelings for this guy, Dragon, eventually, by Dragon manipulating her emotions. Okay, so then we have Anishka going to the kingdom's capital, and she ends up taking with her the queen, which was saved, with a horrifying battle that where praying mantis and walking trees killed like 30 people and only like 5 people survived. And so she's taking Castilla, and she's taking the old queen that is now basically a wooden person to the capital. And when she gets there, things get even worse. And she realizes that everyone there at the capital is looking out for themselves and treating her awful. And then this evil book that is worse, that is a worse book than the bestiary in Harry Potter. And this book turns this nice wizard into this horrifying monster with a bunch of limbs and a bunch of arms and legs and stuff, and it's attacking people and killing them, and it's just a terrifying scene. But Anishka is able to somehow conjure a lightning bolt and throw the lightning bolt at the monster. Yes. Come to find out, the queen is actually super evil, and she's still possessed by the woods. And so, yeah, she's trying to kill everybody. So Anishka kidnaps the kids because everyone around these kids, the heirs to the throne, are evil, and their father is a wannabe rapist, and they run away back to the tower where Dragon, the emotionally manipulator, is there, but Anishka doesn't know where else to go because she has nowhere else to go. And they fight this war with the guy that tried to rape her and this evil queen, and people all die. Everyone gets burned up. The dead come back to life, and it's horrifying, and it's just an awful scene of death and mayhem. And then they realize that the evil queen is actually evil, and everyone realizes that, and they go out to kill the woods. And yeah, that's about the whole story. They go out and kill the woods, and it's awful scenes of Anishka, who barely knows anything about magic, saving the day. And it's just a very terrifying ordeal that she and a few other people have to put up with, especially all the emotional abuse from all the men around her. And in the end, because she has been manipulated so much, she actually is still in love with this dragon guy. But I'm hoping for a sequel in which we find out how evil he really is, and he dies. So, as a horror fantasy book with these awful elements of being manipulated and kidnapped and all the bad things happening to poor Anishka, I give it a 4 out of 5 because it is horrifying, and I feel so sorry for her that she ends up being so damaged that she ends up falling in love with this creeper of 150 years her elder. And I think that as a fantasy book, I give it a 2 out of 5, and that's probably what I'm going to go with because most people think of it as a fantasy book. I thought Naomi Novik's writing was good. She turns a phrase well. She writes sentences well. The pacing was so-so. It was blisteringly fast at times, and then at other times it was so slow that I really didn't care about what was going to happen. And then the pacing was just off for me. And I wanted more awareness by the author of what she was writing and how she was writing it. So yeah, that is my review of Uprooted by Naomi Novik. The Woods and Dragon, you know, dual antagonist, fantastic in that, but it wasn't really meant to be that. So yeah, 2 out of 5.